Hello there. I've been busy setting up a new trombone room and moving, but I wanted to check in real fast. Next week I'm headed to Albany for this new music festival that we play every year, and it's turning into a weirdly specific trombone doubling week for me. I have a couple smaller popsy chamber concert things where I'm playing maybe 75% of everything on tenor trombone and 25% on bass trombone. And then there's a large orchestra concert on top of all that within a week. And to make things more complicated, there's a piece of new music where there's basically no excuse in the world for me to not play contra. So over the course of 5 days, I'm basically going back and forth between tenor, bass, and contra over and over again in all sorts of weird orders, which is a fun trombone buffet. But I just have to remember that all these instruments are trying to convince my face to consume something a little bit different. And that got me thinking about doubling. Specifically, it got me thinking about how I learned to play tenor trombone way after school at a point in my life where I'd really should have already had enough experience on it to be comfortable. A little background. I finished a doctorate in music performance as a bass trombonist, but while I was doing my master's, one of my former teachers told me something over beer that turned out to be annoyingly true. He said that the only way you're ever going to get a job at most universities as a bass trombonist is to be at least twice as good as any tenor trombonist applying, which is not an encouraging thing to hear after you've spent years learning to specialize in bass trombone, so naturally I chose to ignore it. But then I started to see what he meant. I'd get into final rounds of university jobs, and suddenly I'd be answering a lot of questions on whether a bass trombonist can even teach a tenor trombone. Do I know how to play tenor trombone? And I was just doing the whole interview on process on bass trombone because that was what I was most comfortable on. And were those questions fair and justified? Maybe. But most tenor trombonists don't have to justify that they know how to teach bass trombone when they take interviews. But was it happening anyway? And was it a reality of the world I lived in? Absolutely. Eventually I hunted down a Bach 42 with a Thayer and started messing around on it. And at first I kind of wanted a tenor trombone that made me feel like I was still playing bass trombone, which, as it turns out, was not the point. Over time, especially working on this channel and hearing myself record it all the time, I realized I didn't need my tenor to feel like a small bass trombone. I needed it to sound like a tenor trombone. These days, I'm not doing anything very exotic with my equipment. I'm on a pretty normal but heavy large bore tenor trombone setup. I just am playing a regular old 547 slide and a 4G 5G mouthpiece. The biggest difference between tenor and bass trombone to me is actually how it blows. And when I'm playing tenor trombone, I always want to put too much air in it. On bass trombone, I'm used to filling up a larger setup. There's a certain kind of physical generosity that works well for me as a big guy. On tenor, if I bring that same kind of approach unchanged, it just doesn't work. The sound gets what I describe as quanky. The articulation doesn't work for me, and I don't really have flexibility and dynamics and sound that I want, and it just feels hard. So when I'm playing tenor trombone, I have to actively think about using a lot less air. I'm not saying no air, I'm not saying weak air, just less of that kind of bass trombone, I'm here to carry the entire bottom of the orchestra by myself. When I back off, tenor trombone starts working better. The articulations speak better, the dynamics get easier, and the low register actually works a lot better. And that's usually how I know my tenor chops are dialing in. Weirdly enough, it's not the high range. It's the articulation, the dynamic, and the low range of tenor trombone that makes me realize my tenor trombone chops are getting where they need to be. Also, another thought, just in general, is that I find it much easier to go from smaller to bigger than going from bigger to smaller. So if I know I'm going to be playing a lot on tenor like I am this next week, I'll warm up on tenor trombone for a few weeks ahead of time if possible. I'm trying to make tenor trombone feel like home base. Then when I go to bass or my contra, my body gets a clear message, okay, let's open this up, and bass trombone is just home for me and it just works. But if I warm up on bass and then try to make tenor work afterwards, it takes a little while for everything to start working, and I'm much, much more likely to overplay tenor. Trying to use bass trombone air on tenor trombone is kind of like trying to park a moving truck in a compact-only space. You might technically be able to do it, you might technically make it work, but no one's going to enjoy it happening, including yourself. So my larger takeaway is this. If you're a bass trombonist, I really think you should own a tenor trombone. And if you're in school as a bass trombonist, I think you should be allowed to, and honestly required, to spend a couple weeks on tenor occasionally. Not because you're abandoning being a bass trombone specialist, but because tenor is a little bit of a different skill, and it gives you a little bit of a different perspective. And yes, it can open the door to some piddly little gigs too. Some of those piddly little gigs wind up being really fun. Some of those piddly little gigs wind up being weird. Some are both. But being able to say yes to more things is not a bad thing to have in this industry. So if you're a bass trombonist that's been avoiding tenor trombone because it feels uncomfortable, I get it. I avoided it too. But I really do think it's worth doing. Buy a tenor, borrow one, find a decent large bore horn. Put a normal sized tenor trombone mouthpiece in it. Don't overthink it, and don't try to make it a tiny bass trombone. Just let it be a tenor trombone. You might find that not only it makes you a little bit better at tenor trombone, but it also makes you a little bit better at bass trombone, and a little less scared next time opportunity knocks. All right, here is my listening recommendation for this week, and it's a little bit out there. It is Girl Goodbye, played live by Toto for what I assume is a Japanese tour promo video. I'll link it at the end. Toto has this reputation for being kind of a dorky band, and probably justifiably so. They're not exactly trying to look dangerous, but they can absolutely play. This recording sounds fantastic. The engineering is great. The quality isn't like hi-fi quality, but you can hear every single instrument live. And the band is operating at this absurdly high level. Jeff Porcaro on drums is one of the all-time greats on that instrument. It's great to be able to watch him play. His playing is so deep in the pocket that it feels unfair, and the whole band just plays so in the pocket it kind of hurts. If you only know Toto from the big hits, check this one out. It's a good reminder that sometimes the dorky band is dorky because they're too busy being better at music than everyone else. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, what I'm hoping to be a really quick video. I'm trying to get everything working for this new space. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but hopefully sometime in June I'll be on with maybe a Pedersen duet or something like that. So thanks for listening. Check out these videos, and see you later.